Hey guys, welcome back. BDC Care here. We're back with our weekly Q&A content. This is a YouTube video if you're on YouTube. This is not a YouTube video if you're not on YouTube. It's a podcast. It might be an MP3 file, I think, if you use one of those video downloading sites that lets you download a video.
Yeah, maybe. A video or the podcast?
You could download it as an MP4.
Yeah, MP4. MP4 is
you
the
can also,
one that's got
but
a
you
bigger
could
container.
just rip the audio out and just have it be an MP3.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other things you can do with it that I haven't even thought of yet. You could print it out frame by frame.
You can mix us and do our voices.
That's true.
Rapping.
This could be pressed to vinyl right now, for all I know. Yeah. And there are custom vinyl press sort of companies that let you press stuff onto vinyl as long as it's clear that you have the copyright for it. It's I think so that you can do like sort of a cute gift or whatever, give somebody like a real vinyl. And I will say that this is legally binding for this episode. You can use this and put it on vinyl if you'd like to.
All right, what show did I watch? Oh, I watched a show recently where that was it was a time travel show on Netflix, I believe, where because of, you know how certain media become obsolete? Mm-hmm. And I guess they were trying to do audio recordings from like more than 100 years ago. Yeah. And they picked vinyl because it's unlike other media.
The encoding structure doesn't need to be understood, really.
Right. And
all you need is a little needle and a way of amplifying the volume that comes out of it.
And they still had the equipment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's different because you think of all those media, like I grew up with...
Have you seen those demonstrations where you literally take a pin and you tape a cone of paper to it and then you just drag it in the groove?
I've seen that where you take a needle and attach it to a pie plate. Yeah. And the pie plate vibrates enough to, I've seen that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff that you can do.
So it's funny because there's certain media that are potentially usable forever, like microfiche, which was the way we used to store information at the library.
Because it's the same info but littler.
Yeah, and
so all you need to do is notice that there's little information on it,
and you need a light source.
Yeah.
Like, think about all the... Because, I mean, I grew up with... Okay, so, audio tapes, like Walkman. If you don't have a tape player, it's useless. Mm-hmm. Then there was the... Sony did, like, a little... What did they call them? The little MD something, like mini disc and stuff. There's just so much stuff, right? That if you just don't... Because the interface... Like, I still have a USB interface floppy disk. Like, with the little... Not the original floppy disk, but the smaller ones. So I can... get information off it if I want, but at this point, my computer probably won't even be able to read the files. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that thought of like how to convey information to people an indeterminate amount of time in the future has been addressed a couple different ways, a couple interesting ways. Yeah. I think sending it into space, and the info that was on the space probe, but also I think that like suggested like anti-nuclear waste site so that you don't dig it up in a future civilization. There's been a lot of people thinking about how do we communicate
booby trap
good info to people. But they specifically didn't want to booby trap it because they didn't want to indicate that there was something valuable, right? So it's how do you convey specific messages when you don't know how other people are going to be able to receive that information.
Yeah. Tough. And I mean, so
right now, I can't speak for you, but I can say for myself that I give people permission to use this for commercial projects or personal projects, including pressing onto vinyl. So if you don't give permission, I think they have to just cut out my part of the audio if they want to press it onto vinyl.
Grab yours. Yeah. They have to literally, they have to mute me. Yeah.
Oh, so what you are confirming that you don't give people permission to do that? Then
just this episode.
Just this episode. Just this episode, obviously, on vinyl if you want to press it. Yeah. So that you could be listening to it that way, and I would say that that's probably the definitive way to listen to this episode is on vinyl. It just sounds better.
So we gotta get to the Injustice stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is cool. I did not think that we would be able to get at least 12 distinct teams when we started doing this season as Return of Old Favorites, because people often ask us, so what's your favorite teams? What are really good teams? What teams have synergy? How do you load them out? How do you play it? And we've done that for now. This is the 12th episode. And I was thinking that we'd run out of time. And then all of a sudden I just heard, well, one of the best characters I still haven't played with that I love playing with is Batman and Catwoman. Mm-hmm. So along with Flashpoint Batman teams, these are probably the only characters that are capable of relying on basic damage the way we used to rely on basic damage before Tantu Totem. Mm-hmm. Right? Because even when there was gears that would increase power generation. It didn't break the game the same way. And I don't want to say break, because it's not like there's anything wrong with the game, but there was a paradigm shift in how to win and how to play. And there was clearly like just a better strategy, right?
Yeah.
So Batman Ninja Catwoman. So I guess we could start talking about all the things that make her amazing, but I wanted to actually start with one particular shortcoming that no one seems to talk about. And it's not even a big one, but it feels bigger to me because it seems like it's ignored.
Yeah.
So when she tags in and she does that little flash that does a little bit of damage and knocks back the opponent who's not blocking. So if the opponent has Batman Ninja Catwoman, they do it, it really sets you back on your heels. But when you do it, you're vulnerable to your opponent. The normal strategy, or the common strategy that I use of tagging in with power and immediately launching a special to protect myself, it's not available when you're Batman Ninja Catwoman. Or even tagging in and starting a basic attack combo, you just can't do it because you land, you do that flash, and you've got a little pause. There's like a moment where you're vulnerable and you can't do anything, which is kind of awful, but I feel like that's a bit of an equalizer. Because if it weren't for that, I think she would be totally, just really overpowered.
Yeah.
And breaking the game. Although there's a couple exceptions. You can probably see in the if you watch the video, every once in a while it happens that you get to tag in and she doesn't do that and you can do anything immediately. Mm-hmm. If anybody listening to this or watching this can give me a credible technique for making it not happen, I would love to test it. I would be happy to give you credit, and I would do a whole video on it, doing it as many times as I could, because she is a spectacular character with almost no weaknesses. But despite this, right? Like, this is, to me, this is just minor. It's not even that it's that bad. It's just that it feels like it's, like nobody really addresses it. Everybody talks about how great she is. All right. Anyways. So she's, in my mind, she's the best metal character, bar none. So her passive is really what makes her. So her passive is Cat Rage. Gains Rage, which is 5% power drain and up to 300% damage on basic attacks for 21 seconds when she's maxed out, after she knocks out an opponent, tags in, uses special 2, or a teammate is knocked out. And apparently this timer stacks. Each Batman Ninja teammate allows Catwoman to avoid a knockout once per teammate. And the last ability when she's evolved is there's a 50% chance to steal opponent's gear per dark power bar used. Dark power bleed damage over times cannot be rinsed. Interesting thing is that she is much better with her tap combo. So instead of doing what the typical tap combo is, I think it's 2%, 3 hits of 2%, and then a 3% combo ender, which gives us 6, 9, right?
Yeah.
I can't even remember if that's right. Maybe it's 4. Anyways, so that she gets 4 hits, 2% each, and she gets 2 combo ender hits that are 4% each. So that's worth, if she gets a combo ender, 16%. If she doesn't, it's 8%. And her heavy swipe combo is 4% 3 times.
Yeah, which is 12%.
So if anything, it's most of the time it's worth the gamble, because you get you do more. Not only do you do more damage, but you get more power generated.
Yeah.
She is like tailor-made. Her passive is perfect for overpowered super, the gear, because that 50% damage boosts basic attacks. Well, we want her doing basic attacks. The 50% crit chance on basic attacks, love it. The 90% life drain chance on combo ender, love that too. And when she's evolved, she gets a 15% power, 15% drain power on combo ender. So that stacks with her passive beautifully. And so the main vulnerability is power drain reversal from 2 or more pieces of Lexicor gears on the opponent, which it's really the only thing we need to watch out for. And so we need one of our teammates to shatter gears to protect from this. And Batman Ninja Batman, he's also perfect, because he is going to save her from a knockout. Mm-hmm. He has extra sort of triggers on the end of his special 1, so that he can do Claw of Horus effect of shattering gears, more than one roll on it. So oftentimes he'll shatter 2 gears. And so we geared him, like, funnily enough, so he, even though he's not the main damage dealer, he's got Tantu Totem and Master's Death card, plus Claw of Horus. So he comes in if we need him, shatter a bunch of gears on whoever's got LexCorp gears. And that's all Catwoman needs to watch out for.
Mm.
And what's wild about that is that you'll see, if you're looking at the right footage, there's going to be a couple fights here where it doesn't even matter. She does so much damage on her basic attacks that when the opponent is not blocking and they're up to 3 bars of power, she knocks them out.
Wow.
Before they can even use it, because she's just finishing the combo.
Yeah.
I guess, again, we're looking for minor quibbles, right? So another potential danger is when the opponent has power, their special will prioritize over your basics. Now, in a normal sort of main damage deal, that's not an issue because you're doing specials also. Your special, you can time it better. You can prioritize over their specials as long as it's not a super. But again, Catwoman has an answer for this. If you have power to do a special one, do it. If you're unlucky, they will block. And you will eat a special right after that. If you're lucky and they don't block, so normally you give the opponent power with unblocked hits from your specials. Her special one does a bunch of hits, so it would generate a bunch of power for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you still do give them power, but immediately after your special one, if the opponent did not block, they get knocked down, you can drain their power before they even get up. So before they even have a chance to do special.
Yeah.
And some opponents are slow enough that even if they do block, you can still drain their power.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Batman, no. I mean, a bunch of times I've tried this. The faster characters that have a really short latency period or really short, the time it takes them to start doing their basics.
Yeah.
If they're fast enough, then it doesn't. Yeah, you're SOL. But I mean, she's good enough that a lot of times she can still even make up for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and if you're looking at footage, what I was talking about earlier was the Flash. So every once in a while, it doesn't happen. I would so appreciate anybody giving us a credible clue for how to tag her in and not have that engage. I think it might just be random. It's out of our control, but I would love to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. There's a bunch of videos here where, a bunch of fights in this video where Batman Ninja Catwoman and Batman Ninja Batman, as a tag team, they handle easily somebody who's got 3 bars of power, even though we're not using Enchantress Companion Gear, which is normally our way of disabling specials.
Yeah. That
we can still handle them beautifully because they're just doing so much damage. And I love this team. This is a great team, and it's wild to me that it's taken us. This is the 12th team that we've used, and I've been happy with every single team we've used this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there we go. Is that everything you want to say about the team?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a lot of details. Okay. So we have our question. We're coming back to Burke's homemade memes from...
Or Burke Show Me Mad MMS.
Yeah. And so we sort of mostly just talked about the politics part of his question last time, right?
Yeah.
So maybe let's not read the whole thing. Let's do it chunk by chunk. And hopefully we'll get to one more question on this one at least. I do have a little bit more of a hard cutoff today, but we'll see if we have any particular thoughts. So you've heard it last week, but just in case, Burke was talking about sort of selling out and sticking true to your beliefs. And so they said, now a sponsor was a pretty expected one and a logical one, but I'm definitely not a logical person. If I get a sponsor, it has to be something I actually use, or at least something I actually approve. Yes, there's the what if you get 10 million instead of 1 million. Obviously, I will accept more sponsors if it's 10 million. Heck, 1 million Canadian, the strongest currency, is a nice deal, but I have a line and I believe many others do. And no matter what, I want control of the stuff that is labeled under the name. And he talks a little bit more after this, but let's start here. I think this is an interesting question, right? Because
it's a timely one too.
Mm-hmm.
Because didn't the FBI just indict a bunch of YouTubers who were accepting Russian money?
Yeah,
to spread Russian propaganda.
Yeah, and they were getting a massive CPM, like much higher than you normally get from people giving you sort of money or resources. They had a really inflated sort of sense of worth for their content because they were getting Russian money. And so I think one of the things that's interesting about this is the question of what is compromising on your values. Because on a basic level, you will get more money from people who have higher margins on their stuff, right? the advertising and marketing budget from a company
right.
comes from the amount of profit they're making.
Right.
So if they're, charging twice as much as the thing is worth, and I know for different industries, it depends a lot. There's this guy called, I think Tanner Leatherstein, who I see content from, who does leather breakdowns where he tears bags and says, this is how much I expect it to cost for materials.
Right.
This is everything. And his sort of price multiplier gauge is 2.5 times. So in the leather world, when you consider the R&D, when you consider, everything else, he says 2.5 times is a reasonable cost compared to all the input costs to it for you to grow as a business and be sustainable and blah, blah, blah. And so anything under that, he says, it's very cheap and he considers it a great deal. Right. But for the long-term business sustainability, 2.5 is where he sets his mark.
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
Right? Too much more and you're spending on stuff that doesn't matter. And too little, then they go out of business and you don't have the good stuff anymore.
And so, margins on food are much narrower. But on a basic level, right, the more you overcharge, right, and this is in air quotes because everything is overcharging. I'm saying charging anything more than what it costs you, which you have to do. Everybody overcharges some amount because they're
you have to, right?
Yeah.
That's the business model. You're extracting value. You're contributing something, and you're getting paid for what you're contributing to it.
But so the more somebody overcharges, the more you're going to be able to have for your marketing budget, right? That's what they the money has to come from somewhere. Right. And then on the second level, right? So let's look at a specific thing. Raycons, right, are a very popular sponsor on YouTube. You might not have even heard of them. Raycons are Bluetooth earbuds.
Oh, okay.
It's a company owned by Ray J. And the big thing with Raycons that people ask is, are they actually good, right? Is it good value for money? The pitch that they have, and I've heard this a million times from a million different people, is that they're just as good as other top audio brands at half the price, right? And so a lot of people look at Raycons, and there have been people who do breakdowns, and it looks like it's potentially like a rebrand of an already existing product. It's essentially like a white label thing of a product that already costs like half as much. People have issues with sort of the audio quality, the connectivity, right?
Right.
The idea is that this is sort of a thing that is advertised to you, but is not necessarily any better than other things for the same price, never mind double the price.
Right.
And there's a lot of potential issues. But if you haven't heard this, if you haven't, researched them and looked into them yourself, if you don't own a pair, right? Raycon comes to you, offers you a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
They offered to maybe send you the product, have you test it, and you go, it's fine, right? I'm not an audio engineer. I find it comfortable enough.
Yeah.
It works for what I want it. I have no issues with this. I have a good experience. They make me feel special because they're sending me out stuff, right?
Right.
And you go, okay, so they're asking me for money to tell people to read their ad copy, basically, almost exactly, and then, maybe add my own spin, add a little bit more stuff on it, right? Yeah. I don't think for most people that's a totally unreasonable ask, right? There's a lot of people who I really like as creators who do Raycon ads on a regular basis, right? And I don't feel like they're misleading me if the product I get ends up being sort of below my standards or whatever else. I kind of have this understanding of the relationship we have. And so, if the question is just $1 million or $10 million, I think that's kind of easy. But it's a lot different than that, right? It's not like $1 million and you get to hear from or only do ad reads for companies that you really like. It's complicated, right? You might have to reach out to people instead, right? Mm-hmm. The valuation is super different. And then what if it's a company that you just kind of don't know about, right? How much work are you willing to do to put in the research, right? If you're a creative, especially if you're like a YouTuber and you have like a schedule and you need to release things with a certain amount of frequency, right? If you have sponsorship deals or even just for the algorithm in general, there are all of these real world considerations that become more and more complicated. And there's a lot of situations that are very ambiguous, right? Because functionally speaking, the ad read, right, for a lot of content is not massively compromising on a creative vision.
Well, I mean, it's more transparent. Like if it's an actual ad, people don't go in thinking, oh, this is, I'll tell you what's unsolicited. I love my Jabra Bluetooth headphones. I paid for them myself. Mm-hmm. And so, that's the whole idea that when you do a review, you have to disclose whether they gave you the product, whether you're getting some consideration for it. Then it becomes more clear that it is an ad and not just a full endorsement.
That's true. Yeah. So you love your Jabras. I really like my Soundcore earbuds.
Yeah. Anchor.
And in general, anything from Anchor or Soundcore, which is their audio branch, I would say is as good as the reviews tell you it is.
So the one thing I'm going to point out though is I'm not an audiophile.
Yeah.
And the reason why I like the Jabras, the wireless, is because I was not sold on the idea that there's these little things with batteries in them, and the more you recharge them, eventually they're going to die. You can't replace the battery, so there's a built-in obsolescence. They're going to eventually be garbage. Bothered me, and so I was willing to try them out when they went on sale. They had refurbished. And a lot of times those refurbished things end up being brand new because they have so much volume. It feels like
it's like a return or something like that. Yeah,
yeah. And so when I had a problem with one of them, God. Jabra was like so good. It was a model that was no longer remade. So they gave me like the current model. They said, "Hey, is that okay?"
Yeah.
And they just sent it out.
Like, of course it's okay.
Yeah, of course it's okay.
Soundcore, similarly, great customer service.
Yeah.
You know that if you're not getting what they tell you you're going to get, that they will replace it, refund it, whatever, that they will handle it, right? That when you're making that purchase, that the thing that you are looking to buy, if you're reading the page right, is the thing that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And they'll make sure of it.
The other thing is that because when I was working from home, I needed to use the phone a lot. I tried so many different options for talking on the phone where I could keep my hands free to type.
Yeah.
And the only thing that worked, nothing worked as well as the Jabra Talk 45. And it's wild to me because it's the old school kind of, you stick it in your ear, there's a little arm with a microphone on it.
Yeah.
And it's, when you look at all, the bone conduction, and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
This old school thing that looks like a little bit of crap, and it is exactly what I need. Anyways, so there we go. Hey, if Jabra, you want to reach out to us, you want to sponsor us, be happy to.
Yeah.
Accept your sponsorship because I love your products, and Anchor too. I mean, I don't use the Anchor sound stuff, but they did all those accessories, right? Like the chargers and whatnot.
And then JBL also for our Bluetooth like big speakers.
Right.
But JBL is such a known brand. I feel like every third Bluetooth speaker I see somewhere is a JBL speaker.
So there is a difference, right? In that kind of, I totally get Burke, Show Me, Mad, MMS.
Yeah.
The idea that, because there are like people, there's some people who will have integrity no matter what. I think the number is relatively small, and I think sometimes you don't know what you'll do until you're presented with the actual choices and how the kind of pressures, whether, if it's just extra money, if it's your livelihood, if in the short term you could potentially lose your home, if, some people really make more sacrifices than others for their principles.
Well, so I think the best example I've ever seen of this is somebody called Noah Caldwell-Gervais, and he does really long form video essays on YouTube. Okay. And he is exceptionally good at what he does. And he has something that makes, like, he is principled to the point where it almost doesn't make sense to me. Like, I understand theoretically why he's doing it, but, like, practically. So, first off, he started out, like, doing YouTube, working part-time, or, like, working at a pizza place. And so, he was getting paid like $14 or $15 an hour or whatever. And he did that.
He's American?
Yeah.
That seems high for an American.
I don't know, but whatever. But he's never, to my knowledge, done any monetization or ads on his content.
Okay.
And then he eventually got enough patron support to do this full time.
Okay.
And it lets him sort of purchase the games, review and stuff like that. Because there was a time where literally he didn't buy the DLC because it wasn't worth, like an hour and a half of making pizzas to him, right?
Right.
For a game. And he has a no questions asked, full retroactive Patreon refund policy where
you've told me about
you're able to request from him to give back all the money he's ever received from you from Patreon at any point, which to me just like
that's over the top.
It is, and I don't know if that's supposed to be every dollar that you put in. I assume that that's like not including the Patreon fees, because otherwise he would be taking a financial hit from people.
I mean, he still would be taking a financial hit.
Yeah, he would be, because that money is spent, right? Like that's invested. But that is clearly a man who falls very strongly on a specific series of principles, because he's making so much less money than he could, and at every turn he is making decisions that would theoretically result in him that have no upside, right? That only have downside, because I don't think anybody is in the position of supporting somebody on Patreon and then going, well, if I ever really feel like I need it later, I can just ask for all my money back, right? I think the only types of people supporting somebody on Patreon have that income that they are okay having essentially disappear, or for whatever rewards they're getting. Because I don't believe Noah Caldwell-Gervais offers much in terms of rewards. But anyways, so there are, you know, a handful of people that I see that have like really unassailable values clearly, and I only notice them because they are strong to the point that they're clearly hurting them, or clearly only costing them, that they're holding to them so strongly that there's no real upside. Because I think there are people, you know, there are companies that are green and values driven and whatever, but there's a lot of times where they're doing good things but being public about it, and it's part of their brand, it's part of their marketing, it's part of their strategy in some way. And then there are some things where you go, you are doing this and there is no way that you are getting more out of it than you're putting in, right? And you can sort of really unambiguously see that like this is purely values driven.
And I guess the one thing to point out though is that these are clearly a specific type, because for people like us, where the amount that we're making off YouTube, off Patreon is piddling. Like it's not a livable amount of money. It's not a livable wage.
It's more than I would have expected, but it's less than is meaningful in almost any way from like an actual money perspective. From a coolness perspective, still very cool.
But the point I'm getting at with that though is that it means that it's easy for us to have integrity. Right? Because it's not costing us much to have integrity, and to give up. If we gave up all the income that we made from YouTube and
it would still not be a lot of money.
Well, it's just it's meaningless, right? So that kind of sacrifice is meaningless. So part of it will be that we're talking about the big YouTubers where this is their thing. Like there's real actual risk, because for us there isn't. That's
true. So it's an interesting question. We still make you watch ads, right? Even though it's not a huge amount of money for us. Because it's interesting. What people's time and effort and energy is worth is an interesting question. Because I think like for the amount of money we make and for the amount of time that people have to watch ads, I think, you know, if this were my job, I think I would want to move away from forcing people to watch ads if I could help it, right? Or I'd want to make the most money from it so I could be comfortable with the least amount of ads. Because we're not just here to squeeze money out of people, but it's an interesting question, and I'll let you finish your thought, and then I do have to go.
Well, what's wild to me is that there was this was more apparent to us when our channel was actually more popular, and we had a lot of volume on the glitches, those videos, because there would be people who would resent watching ads for glitches that would save them hours of grinding. Like it's funny that, you know, I don't know, my perspective is different because we found sort of the glitches and we optimized the glitches on our own time for our own benefit. And then these people really just expected it handed it to them for no cost, but also not even the cost of having to watch an ad. Like it was just, it was interesting to me. Just that kind of the calculus that goes on in their mind to figure out what's worth it and what's not.
Yeah, I think stuff like YouTube, especially when you're trying to monetize it, does make you interact with sort of what we owe each other and what value being provided looks like on both ends of it, right? Because really, the way that YouTube and a lot of like online platforms work is sort of extracting value from each other, right? And figuring out in really formalized ways for making money, right? Like a lot of sponsorships is this amount of time, your audience needs to hear you say this, and then maybe we'll sweeten the pot by this amount for people signing up, right? So there is a real sort of concrete abstracted but specific way that you sort of value like these loose networks of interaction we have with each other. And so I think it's interesting and it's worth thinking about. I think not every content creator does, but for Burke, I think that regardless of where you fall exactly in terms of how you value it and what your values are, I think to me the most important thing is that you're thinking about it and that you're asking the question about what, you know, people's times and effort and energy is worth, right? Like, is it worth it to get half a cent to have somebody watch a 30-second video ad? It's an interesting question, right? At the very least. And, you know, what do we need to do to feel like we've earned that? Or do we need to do anything, right? If somebody's watching this video for half an hour, you know, can we ask for them to spend 3 minutes of their time watching ads or, you know, 15 seconds, make them click a skip button 3 times?
Right.
But it's I think does bear thinking about. And I think on that note, we'll end it off for the week. We'd like to give a huge... actually, one last thought. If you're on the podcast platforms, no ads.
That's true.
We make no money from it. No ads. Small volume. Right. We don't mind. So to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to people who, sort of related to what we're talking about, have decided to just give us money because they like our stuff, right? They've sort of transcended that that forced transactional nature.
Right.
And they have made a personal decision to say, yeah, have a couple bucks. So I'd like to give a huge thank you to
Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi 127, and Nora Klimek, who are supporting us on the credited level.
So there we
and
go.
Their contributions actually are the equivalent of thousands and thousands of people watching our videos.
Yeah. So very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of you watching our videos. You know, your impact in terms of monetary contributions might be fractional compared to our patrons, but we still appreciate you being here. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate, beyond the transactional, right? People commenting and engaging with us, not because it's boosting our numbers, right? But like having real, like actual interactions with us, because we do read and respond to the comments. That is a huge part of understanding that people still want to see this stuff and making it feel like it's worth doing, is getting to, you know, see like in real concrete, like text on a screen that somebody wrote, how they related to the stuff that we're making, that they're thinking about it and they have things to say about it, and that it's a conversation.
Yeah. And there were a few comments that I'd had pulled from last week that we just didn't get around to, but I'd love to actually talk about some of those.
So there we go. Yeah, thanks to all of you, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.